Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Melissa Rich. Welcome to another episode of Taking Care of Your Podcast Temple. This is actually episode 40. Can you believe it? I mean, it's been going on.
Well, you are old, so that'll happen.
And this one is, I'm calling it A Life Well Lived. I'll tell you what that's going to be about here in just a few minutes. But I want to start off with the introductory things that I always say at the start of a podcast. The objective of this podcast is to help women connect with God regularly. And I say women, I know I have some male listeners as well. Y'all are also welcome. But to do that using his grace, power, strength, might, wisdom, all the things to improve their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. There are 4 principles that we can use to do this. The first one is to keep our focus on God. This is harder to do than it sounds. How often do you get distracted during the day?
What? I'm sorry, you were speaking. Go ahead.
Yeah, point made. Okay, next, acknowledge that we are not enough on our own. We are not smart enough, strong enough, attractive enough, rich enough, whatever. We need God's help. The good news is he is always happy to give it to us if we ask him for it. He won't force us to take it. Next is remember it is about progress, not perfection. A lot of times we can really be beating ourselves up because we're not doing everything we need to be doing. And then to work on consciously changing our thoughts, because our thoughts are tremendously important. They affect how we think, act, feel, what we believe. So if you all are giving yourself a lot of toxic, negative messages, you need to work on changing those. Okay.
Let me add something to that.
Go ahead.
I did a lot of, when I was in ministry, one of the things that I talked to the people that were in my ministry is, I think you need to come to a point in your life where you need to acknowledge that God is God and you are not.
Yeah,
and
that's a good way of putting it.
When you come to that point, it really helps you to understand your place within the scope of things.
Yeah.
I think that if you can't acknowledge who God is and you put yourself in the place of God, then the responsibility of life is very, very heavy.
Yes.
And so you think that you have to do everything. You're responsible for everything. And if you don't do something, then the entire world's going to fall apart.
And it's all on you.
But if you can be at a point in your life where you can say, okay, God, you're God, I'm not God, then you're putting the responsibility on God. And all you have to do is live who you are.
Yeah.
And that really does help. And so as I was listening to Melissa talk about these things, it really is a thing of perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that if we understand perspective in life and understand where we are within the scope of things underneath who God is, then when we give God the power in our life, then we can take what God has given us and be responsible for that. It helps us to be able to live the life that he intended us to live.
So we take ourselves off the throne, put him on it, and that's a much easier way to live.
Absolutely.
Because I know when I try to run things, it does not go terribly well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So the verse for this podcast, and I'll introduce our guest here in just a minute, is 1 Corinthians 3:16. Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? That's such a good one. Okay. I always start off with a quick prayer. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Lord, I just want to thank you so much for letting me do this. Thank you for Mike being here. Thank you for the topic that we're going to discuss today. And I ask that it will bless the people who are listening because it has certainly blessed us. Thank you for loving us, Lord. Amen. Okay. So today I have an amazing guest. His name is Mike Green. I have literally known him all my life because he's my brother.
She's been blessed.
Don't laugh. It just encourages him. Yes. So he has been on once before. This was you were probably 7 or 8 episodes ago when we talked about why we should go to church. And that was a fun one. We enjoyed that. Today, the name of this podcast, I'm calling it A Life Well Lived. We are coming up on the, can you believe, 14-year anniversary?
Since Mom passed?
Yep, of our mom's death.
Yeah.
And so we are going to be she was just such an amazing person. We're going to be remembering her, honoring her, and telling you guys about her because, again, this is a podcast aimed at women. She was a woman. And
an amazing woman.
So her name was Barbara Green Hanscom, maiden name. And we're going to just talk about her son. So, and you just jump in whenever you want to, as you always do.
No, I mean, you talk so well, she always takes up the lead and she just won't stop. So that's okay.
Like you never can interject.
Not with you.
You're so shy.
I am.
Yeah. Okay, so mom's name was Viola Hanscom, and she died when mom was young. Do you know how old she was?
Well, I think she was probably, like 5 or 6.
That's what I'm thinking.
She was, because her father really couldn't take care of her at that time.
Theodore Hanscom, my understanding is in his job, he traveled a lot. So he was not able to care for a young child. So they did kind of this informal, kind of a foster family with some friends of theirs, which would never fly today. I mean, you would have to jump through all the hoops. But she went to live with family friends. And at some point
in Iowa.
Yes, in Iowa, because and he was in California.
He was in California.
At some point, Theodore, that was her dad's name, remarried to Sammy, and mom came to live with them in California. And I think by that time she was like a young teen.
Yeah, she was in her teens. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she had an older half brother, Louis, and I don't know. And Louis has a daughter, Wendy. Wendy sent me a bunch of genealogy information. Thank you, Wendy, because I'm going to let her know that I did this podcast episode so she can listen to it. And I don't know if Louis was, I think that Sammy was Theodore's third wife. I think Viola was his second, and then he had another one before that, and that was Louis's mom, I think.
I wasn't there.
Sure. Yeah, me neither. She also had a half-sister, Betty. I'm not sure where she
Aunt Betty. Yeah. Betty. We shared birthdays, Aunt Betty and I did.
Cool. Yep. Very cool. So I remember a little bit about Theodore. Do you remember when he came to see us when we lived in Mexico?
Yeah, vaguely. I remember that he was tall and old.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
He was probably just like in his 50s or something. So
he seemed really old.
He seemed really old to us, yeah.
Yes.
He was a Christian Scientist while mom was growing up. And one story that I do remember is that he developed a kidney stone, and totally refused to go to the hospital for 3 days.
Yep.
And then he gave in.
Because of the pain. And so he was no longer a Christian Scientist.
That went out the window. Yeah, that was the end of that. However, mom was not raised in a Christian home. I mean, she knew nothing about God or the Bible. She was a heathen. I mean, she said that. I don't remember how she became a Christian, although you're going to read something later on that may address that.
We do.
Yeah. I think she just started going to church and encountered God there. So then she became a Christian, but she knew nothing about walking with God, about any of the spiritual disciplines, which is so odd when you think about where she ended up.
Oh, I know.
It was just bizarre. So in college, she came into contact with the Navigators, and they really discipled her. And if we kind of start crying here and there, just bear with it. It's
we will get choked up, I promise. Yeah. I went through and I read everything before this a couple of times, just so I won't choke up, and I probably will, but I won't be as bad as I would have.
Yeah. So the Navs taught her about having a quiet time, memorizing scripture, reading the Bible, and attending church regularly. All the stuff that she didn't know you were supposed to do. And how would you?
And a lot of Christians don't nowadays because really discipline's not taught within churches, and so it's not part of your everyday learning about Christ.
So mom was in California at that time, huge beach girl, which the love for the beach she passed on to all of her children. Well,
her name's Barb, and the Beach Boys wrote that song about her. At least that's what we told our friends.
We told all of our friends, and I think they believed us. So at least they seemed impressed for a little bit.
So, for a little while until they found out we were lying.
It sounded good. So she and our dad met when he was in the Navy and in San Diego.
Well, when he was on leave in San Diego.
Right. He was in leave.
Ship docked, and he was looking for a church, and he found a church, and that's
I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he came in on shore leave, and he went to a church, and he saw this redheaded woman, and that's pretty much all she wrote. So that's how they met.
And what mom or dad told me is that when they first knew each other, they argued all the time over everything. Not like coming to blows or anything, but just not agreeing. Then dad was gone for a year. So I don't know, did he go back to the Navy?
Or he went back to the Navy to finish out his time. And then after that, he ended up going to college. Actually, he went to Baylor.
Yeah, yes.
And he graduated from Baylor. And once he finished with Baylor, he decided that he was going to go back to find that redheaded woman that he couldn't stop thinking about.
Right.
And that was back in 57, he graduated from Baylor.
Well, so that would have been back like in 55 because they got married in 56.
56 he graduated from Baylor. So he went back and found her, and they got married really quick.
Yeah. And I'm assuming they kept in touch.
Yeah, I think they did. I think they corresponded. I'm sure that Facebook was way back then. Yeah.
No, they probably wrote letters or whatever, who knows, or called. I don't know.
And I know that he said when he was on the ship that he got letters from Mom.
Okay,
and
I
so
didn't know
they
that.
wrote back
Okay,
to
so
him.
they did. Okay. So they got married in 1956 in California. They had me in May of 1957, and they got married. What was their anniversary? March? It was March, right?
March
17. Okay. So that's when they got married.
Well, at least we agreed on that. I mean, it's not we're close.
I know. You can tell we really rehearsed this very well. They had me in May 1957, and then they moved to Texas 6 weeks after I was born. And I remember that, really vividly.
The drive, you remember that? Yeah.
Well, what I probably do remember, they drove across country in the summer in a non-air conditioned car, because that would have to have been like mid-June when they left, or end of June. So you want to talk about this part?
Yeah, Dad decided that he wanted to go to seminary at Southwestern Seminary in Fort Worth, and Mom worked in the doctor's office, and Dad pastored several small churches when he was there, which a lot of the preacher boys do when were there in Texas. And that's where I was born, was in Fort Worth, and then Chris was born in Lufkin. Because
I remember when Chris was born.
Yeah, Lufkin. He was born in Lufkin.
Okay.
And so actually, he was born in Lufkin because Dad was pastoring a church in Lufkin. And you don't have this written down, but you'll get a kick out of this. The name of the church that Dad pastored in Lufkin was called Happy Hour Baptist Church.
Oh,
yeah.
Happy Hour.
Happy Hour Baptist Church. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was a very small church.
When did they change the name?
And I don't know, but
maybe they used it to attract people.
They go for cocktails on Sunday night.
Not Southern Baptist.
Yeah, but it was Southern Baptist. And they at seminary, once a year they have missions week, and it's a big deal. And so all the preacher boys go there, and Mom told Dad, we are not doing that. We are not going to missions week because I know if we go to, you didn't know this. Yeah, she told Dad, I know if we go to missions week, God is going to call us to the deepest, darkest, most remote place in the earth to be missionaries. And I don't want to do that because I don't even play the piano. That was what Mom said.
Okay.
But Dad says, well, at least we can go and just see. Let's just go and see. And so they went, and while they were at mission week, they both got called into missions, and they felt that this is God's calling to them. And so they gave their lives to missions. And so that's what they decided that they needed to do. And, so we spent 12 years of our life in Latin America.
Yep.
And so it wasn't the darkest, deepest parts of Africa, which Mom was really happy about. I guess she struck a deal with God. And you want to talk about this here?
Yeah. So we were living in Lufkin, Texas, and I guess it was Happy Hour.
It's Happy Hour Baptist Church.
Wow,
now you know where you were saved.
I do. And I started asking them questions about becoming a Christian. I was 7 years old, and I remember they just set me down and explained everything, how it all worked. And I know that that's young, but I got it. I'm like, this is a really good deal. It's funny, you don't know this part. When they talked about how we sin and we do bad things, and I was like, yeah, because sometimes I'm not very happy with Mike. I did. That was my example. I got it.
Where to go?
I thought that makes perfect sense to me.
Nice.
So I was like, yes.
She has to leave now.
Yeah. I was like,
I'll finish.
Yeah. You got the note. You can just go. So I said yes. And I asked Jesus into my heart. I became a Christian, and Dad baptized me a few Sundays later. And I think he baptized off 5 of us, but I think not sure.
Yep.
So how did you become a Christian?
We were in Mexico, actually.
Okay.
We lived, I think it
Must
was.
have been in Mérida.
No, I think it was in Cuernavaca.
Okay.
And I remember it was in Cuernavaca, actually. And
which is near Mexico City.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Right outside.
Gorgeous.
Cuernavaca is called the land of eternal spring.
Yeah.
And so
beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And Mom and Dad, for us, it was normal. Any place we went, Mom and Dad would sleep in separate rooms because my dad snored like a freight train.
Gosh.
And so if Mom wanted any sleep whatsoever, they had to sleep separately. It wasn't because they didn't love each other. It's because they did love each other, and they didn't want
they didn't want to kill each other.
Yeah, so that's kind of, they slept separately. So I remember I had, for some reason, they think I told a lie, which I never told a lie, and I didn't understand that. But they called me into Dad's room, and I remember sitting on his bed and them talking to me about lying and how lying made God sad, and lying was a sin, and how Jesus had come and died on the cross. And at that time, I understood what salvation was, and so I accepted Christ into my life at that time. And Dad baptized me as well there in Cuernavaca at our local church, and so that's my salvation experience.
Well, like I said, I'm pretty sure they led all of us to Christ, and I'm almost sure that Dad baptized all 5 of us.
I think he did. I think that
correct.
Chris and Susie were baptized in Edmond.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm not sure about Nancy, but I don't think he held her down long enough.
That's our youngest sister. Okay. So while we're going to be going back and forth, y'all, so that's fine. While they were still in Texas, they went to missionary training. I said it's seminary, but I don't know if it was at seminary, wherever they do missionary
No, they
training.
did it. That's up in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, that's right. In Richmond, yeah. And so it was, I don't know, several months, I think, of training.
I think it's 6 weeks of training.
Okay, that they had to go through, and then they finished that, and there was a ceremony where they were commissioned or whatever. And so there were several couples who were, I think there were like 8 or 10 people, maybe 12, and they were all pretty nervous about this because it's a big thing, and so they decided they would have a prayer time before they went in, to the thing. So they're sitting around this table, they're holding hands, praying, and they get to this one guy, and he is so nervous. He goes, "Lord, we come to you with heartful grace." No, wait. And they all just died laughing. And they finally got themselves under control. And Mom said they're sitting there and are holding hands, and you can feel them shaky because people are still laughing quietly. But it really broke the ice.
Yeah, it helped them to calm down a little bit.
Yeah,
they're ready to go.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you remember this, but well, I'll let you tell this part. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They would spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in language school.
Costa Rica.
And this is when we're in San Jose, Costa Rica. And they struggled with a new language because it's hard, to process. Your brain understands one language, and now they're trying to teach you new language as an adult. We moved to Costa Rica. It was in '63, so I was 3 years old. Melissa was 5, and so I really wasn't speaking that much English, language at the time. At 3 years old, speaking some, but here we move into a new country, and I'm developmentally learning how to speak. And so I'm speaking Spanish, boom, like that. We just absorbed it like sponges. And so while my parents were at school learning language, we had a maid staying with us who only spoke Spanish.
Oh, that's right.
And so I'm 3 years old. How do I remember this and you don't? So she's talking to us in Spanish, and we're understanding everything that she's saying. And so Mom and Dad are coming home after long days of spending time, 8 hours a day in class.
Their brains were fried.
And they're fried. And we are just jabbering the Spanish like it's no big deal. And so I remember Dad asking me specifically when we would say something, "Why did you say it like that?"
Yes.
And we're going,
"That's how you say it."
I don't know. That's just how you say it. And they're sitting there learning how to conjugate verbs and all of this stuff, and we're just doing it naturally. And I remember Dad taking Melissa to the market with him to talk to the people in the open markets, because she would translate much easier than he could and process it much faster.
And he would take you sometimes too, and they would just say, "Tell the man." And they would say, "What? Why did you say it like that? Why did you use that verb tense?" And we're like,
it's just easy. It was easy for us to process. And so, and then also the other things I remember is like, I remember riding a bus. And we were like the only blonde-headed people that people had seen down there. And people would reach out and touch your hair.
Now, you're thinking of Merida.
No, that was in Costa Rica.
Okay, because I know it happened in Merida.
Yeah, and they would say pelo rubio, which means blonde hair. And they would just touch your hair. It's like you were some kind of a unicorn or something. And it was very strange, but I mean, I grew up with people just reaching out and touching me unbidden. I never asked to be touched, and they just wanted to touch my hair because they had never seen or touched blonde hair.
Well, they would do that in Merida too, in Mexico. And they would also, I remember them rubbing our skin to see if the color would come off.
Yeah.
Because they had never seen, at that point, there were very few Europeans or Americans in Merida, because it's pretty remote.
And the fact that we spoke like them, that really freaked them out, because That's how we grew up. We grew up with the same diction and accent and everything else that they did. And so they really thought that was a very unusual thing.
So we looked like these little gringos, but we opened our mouth and we sounded
just like
Latin
they
American.
did.
Yeah. So it was kind of weird. So after language school, they were appointed to Mexico, went to Merida in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's on the opposite side of the Yucatan Peninsula that Cancun is, because a lot of people know where Cancun is. Not many people know where Merida is. And when we went there, you may remember some of this too, it was really, really remote. I mean, now you can just fly in or drive in. At that point, there were several bridges we had to go over. There were 2 ferries. I mean, it was just very, very remote to get to. And at that time, people who lived in Merida, when they had to go into the interior, like to Mexico City or something, they would say, Voy a Mexico. I'm going to go to Mexico. They consider themselves a separate country almost because it was so far removed. It was tough to get to.
And I still remember when we first moved there, they asked Pastor Mandujano to find a house for us. Okay.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Finding a house for gringos with 5 kids or 4 kids at that time is very difficult. But he told the mission board that he says, "Oh, I found a wonderful house. It's big enough for all the family, and it's wonderful." And well, come to find out, the house that he found was it was big, and it had plenty of rooms. It had no hot water at the time. The electricity was sketchy. Did I mention that no one lived there because they said it was haunted?
Haunted, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a pool.
There was a pool inside the house.
Basement or upstairs? Yeah. I don't remember.
I think it was on the first floor, but it went down to the basement.
Yeah.
And it wasn't full of water. It was just, and then the cockroaches were so bad that when we took showers, we had to leave our shoes on because they were all over the place. And it was it was the nastiest house I've ever seen in my life. And
I think Mom lasted 10 days.
Yeah, Mom said, Jim, we cannot live here. I cannot do this. And then after that, Dad decided that he would look for a house. And he found this beautiful house that Dueña B owned. And we lived there. And it was a modern split level house. And it had, you walked in and there was a level here, and then another level went down, and one went up to the kitchen, and another went up to the bedrooms. And it was beautiful, in a beautiful neighborhood. And anything would have been better than the haunted house.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we lived at that time.
And that was the house. Well, back up a little bit. Dad was gone a lot working with the local churches.
Yes.
So Mom is there with 4 kids. Nancy came some point in there. I don't remember exactly when. She was born in Merida.
She was born in Merida.
I don't remember where Susie was born.
Susie was born in Fort Worth right before we left. She was a baby
before we left to Costa Rica. Okay. Hard. It happened a while ago. I've slept since then. Oh, hush. So again, Dad was gone a lot working with the local churches. So Mom was dealing with a lot of things on her own. So we got this house that Doña B, that's what we called her.
That means the owner, and her last name started with a B.
Yeah.
And so we always called her Dueña B. So,
Dueña? I thought it was Dueña.
Dueña, it's the owner.
Oh, I thought it was Doña B. Whatever. Anyway, so she and Mom became friends.
Mm-hmm. And she was very Catholic.
Her whole family was. And so one time when Dad was gone, the houses in Merida had flat roofs. And so people it's kind of like in the Holy Land, my understanding is. And you would sit out there in the evening because it was cooler. And so we were out there running around on the roof. And I remember I saw this. Chris is coming towards me, and he trips over a ledge and falls down this flight of concrete stairs. He's our middle brother, the one who comes after.
Well, not just a flight. He was on the roof. He fell down the roof.
Yeah, head first.
On one story onto concrete stairs, down the flight of concrete stairs.
All the way down.
Yeah, that was his first experience with diving.
Yeah. So he had to have been
probably 3 or 4.
Yeah. So I'm screaming for Mom, trying to get down. And of course, Mom we had only been there maybe a few months. So I don't know what all Mom did, but we got him to the hospital. Doña B came with her family. They're all sitting there in the waiting room doing their rosaries and praying. And, it took a while to get Dad back in. And we weren't sure they were going to make it. I mean, he really cracked his head like an egg.
He split his head from here all the way here. His cranium, his skull was split in half.
The top part. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think he was like unconscious for a couple of days. But when he finally regained consciousness again, one of the first things he said was, "Can I have some ice cream?" And Mom's
No,
like,
he said, "Yo quiero un sándwich de mantequilla."
"Oh, okay, mantequilla,
Oh, no, it's how do you say peanut butter?
mantequilla de maní."
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah. A peanut butter sandwich. I thought he asked for ice cream.
I want to have a peanut butter sandwich, and they knew he was going to be okay.
Yeah, okay, you're going to be fine. Anyway, so that was kind of the way it was. Do you remember going to the Mexican schools?
No, yeah, I do. And the first Mexican school was Miguel Alemán, which was right around the corner.
Okay.
And I used to walk up there. I was the only white kid in the school, and Miguel Alemán is Spanish for German.
Yeah.
And so it was a German school, but it was Spanish.
I know.
Go figure.
Whatever.
Yeah. And so I went there for my first year, and then after first year or two, first year mom's homeschool.
Yes. Oh, that didn't last very long.
That was a train wreck.
Yeah. Yeah, it worked well with me. You, however, you were bouncing all over the place. I remember that.
And so then I had to get like a little uniform, and I went to Miguel Alemán and went there. And then after that, we went to
it's a downtown
Werner
school. What was it?
Werner.
That was in Cuernavaca.
Oh,
Werner was Cuernavaca.
And so was Kurt.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we went to those schools. I remember.
But we had to ride 2 different buses. And what I remember is the schedule, and it was because of the heat, and so few buildings had air conditioning back then. We went to school literally from 7 to 11 in the morning, went home for lunch and a siesta, and everybody was on this schedule. And then we went back to school from 3 to 5 because you just couldn't do it in the middle of the day. It was too hot. And I've taught at a couple of universities, and I told some of my college students about that, and they were like, "That sounds like an amazing schedule. Can we do that?"
Yeah.
No, sorry. Okay, then we went to Cuernavaca. You want to take this part?
Yeah, Cuernavaca is right outside of Mexico City. Mexico City's up in the mountains, and you drive down the mountain for about 45 minutes to an hour, and you end up in Cuernavaca, which is in a valley, and it's called Land of Eternal Spring. Which
if you turn a circle completely, you're totally surrounded by mountains.
Oh yeah,
it's beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And so while we were there, really, Mom started connecting with people, and there's a lot of expats in Cuernavaca.
Yeah, much more so than in Merida.
Yes, it's a good place to retire, and that's where she met Jay Armstrong, and Jay Armstrong was an expat American who became a swim coach for us. And here we are.
We were raised on
I'm like 6 years old at that time, and they throw me in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and Jay starts screaming at me to swim.
And she's smoking.
While she's smoking, yeah. And so that's fun. And so here we are. The name of the hotel was Casino de la Selva. I don't even think that's there anymore.
Probably not.
I think they have a shopping mall there now. Someone told me. And so, but there's all these American kids swimming on a swim team. I don't think we ever competed. I think all we did was swim.
But you know what? It burned off energy.
It did burn off energy.
We got home, we ate, and we were out.
We were very, very tired. But we met our neighbors, and then we had people from church. And,
right.
Mom knew how to meet people, and she loved people.
Good at connecting, and people loved her.
Absolutely.
And I think part of that is because she was never judgmental.
Oh, never.
She never looked down at people or felt superior to anybody. Yeah. She had a very humble heart.
Yep. And then we came back to the States.
Yes. We were in Mexico for 5 years, in Merida for 3 years, and then in Cuernavaca for 2. Then Dad became pastor at Highland
Park Baptist.
Highland Park. I left something out. Highland Park Baptist Church in Edmond, Oklahoma. So do you remember this?
Oh, do I remember? I still cringe every time I think about it. You know how you get in trouble at church where if you're sitting there and your dad reaches across and smacks you for talking in church. Well, your father being the pastor.
Yeah, it's a little more than that.
I was talking in church, and I still remember that. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. I was talking in church, and my dad saying, "Son," from the pulpit, "you will be quiet, and we're going to talk about this when we get home from church." And Mike would just wilt. And if there was any way that I could have disappeared into that pew, I would have done it. And that was fun. Yeah. No, it wasn't. But the reason for that is because Mike did not know how to whisper at that age. I knew how to whisper. It's just that nobody else knew how to listen. That's the thing. See, honestly, I talked way more than he did, but I could talk quietly. And so Dad never heard me.
he heard all the time. So
that's because he was just listening to me.
Yeah. So another story from that time is kind of an occupational hazard for pastors is that women in the congregation will fall for you because they're not happy in their marriage. And they're looking, here's this guy in the pulpit, and he is just so warm and loving and compassionate. He's so great. Well, we had a lady in Edmond. I'm going to call her Mary Sue. That was not her real name. And she was literally in love with Dad. And so she would send him flowers at home. I don't know if you remember that. Mom was not amused. She kept wanting to go in for counseling. And Dad would do that, but his rule was, and this was the first time I'd heard of preachers doing this, but was smart. His secretary's desk was right outside his office door. And she had to be in her desk the whole time, and he would leave his door open. Well, that's not what Mary Sue wanted. And so after she saw that that's all she was going to get a couple of times, she stopped. But yeah, I remember opening the flowers from Mary Sue and Mom looking not very happy.
Yeah.
Okay. So when Highland Park Baptist, I go to Highland Baptist now. That's confusing. They asked Dad to be his pastor, to be their pastor. Mom made it really clear, as you said before, she did not play the piano, she did not play the organ, and she could not be up at the church at all hours being an unpaid employee, which is what a lot of churches did at the time.
Well, and Dad also told him, that's one of the things I always respected about Dad is when Dad went, he says, this is not a package deal. When I come, you get me. And I learned this from Dad. And when I went to churches, I told him the same thing. You get me. You're not getting a 2-for-1 deal. My wife doesn't come in this package. And on top of that, Dad also stood up for us kids. He says, my kids are not perfect. My kids are not going to be here every time the doors open. My kids are not going to be part of every children's activity that happens. And so he took us off the hook. And so I really appreciated that about Dad.
So a few other stories. I remember the chore charts that Mom
those were famous. The KP list.
Yeah, the KP list, right. When you have 5 kids, you have to have them doing things or you're never going to leave the house. You're going to be constantly doing stuff. So
I think if you only have 2 or 3 kids, that's kid, you need to have chores for them.
She would make up charts and we could swap because we were always swapping back and forth. But what I do remember is if we had dish duty, she would sit in the kitchen and read to us, which I loved. I thought that was so cool. And we had no dishwasher. We were the dishwasher. But the KP list, by the way, if you're wondering what the KP list, one person would set the table, one person would clear the table, which included putting up the leftovers and things like that. One person would wash the dishes, and one person would dry the dishes and put them up into where they belong, and one person would have a day off. So this went on. You remember that pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. And 7 days a week. And so
we ate 7 days a week.
And so Mom and Dad, and this was for dinner, and Mom and Dad would not do that. Dad would cook, and if there was a dessert to be made, Mom would make the dessert, but we were responsible for everything else. And so but we knew that every week that would be posted up on the refrigerator. And so we would know. So like on Monday I might have to set the table. Then the next day I was going to have to clear off the table. The next day I was going to have to wash dishes. The next day I was going to have to, and then, so I would know what I would have to do. And so every week we would have 2 days off, and every week we would go through everything. And so it was really an interesting thing. And so all of us learned responsibility, and it took a lot of the pressure off Mom and Dad of having to be responsible, for all of us. But one of the things I did love is that when Mom would sit there and read to us. And the important thing about Mom reading to us here, this is interesting, is that when we grew up, Mom and Dad put a very important emphasis on reading for us. If we wanted to watch TV, and by the way, there wasn't a lot of TV to watch back then.
There were only 3 channels.
There were 3 channels.
And I think they were all still black and white.
In order to we could watch 6 hours of TV a week. That's all we were allowed.
I didn't
6
remember
hours.
that. Okay.
Yep. In order to earn that 6 hours, we would have to read 3 hours. And if we only read for 2 hours, we only got 4 hours of TV. But when we were washing dishes, my mom would take the book that we were reading and would read from that book for us, and that would count towards our reading time.
I didn't remember that.
And you're old, you're expected to forget things. And so it was a time that she could spend with us one-on-one reading to us, and we could interact with her. And that was really kind of a neat thing. And on top of that, we get credit for reading. And
Well, see, I didn't care about that because as soon as I learned how to read, I've never been without a book in my hand.
No.
So she probably didn't do that for me because I was like, I only have to read 3 hours? What?
The way that they punished Melissa was that you can't read for
about
a week.
that.
That's right. They would punish her by not letting her read.
That was horrible, y'all.
She never got grounded from doing things other than reading. So
I never got spanked. You and Chris got spanked. They just had to take my books away.
Well, now you wear Spanx, but that's a whole different story.
Oh, hush, I do not actually. Okay. So another story. I was in high school in Edmond, Oklahoma. We were there at the time, and I got my driver's license. I was so excited, y'all, for about 2 days. And then Mom's like, oh, good. You can go take Mike here, and Chris needs to go over here. And I was chauffeur. And I was like, this is not nearly as much fun as I thought it was going to be. But I kind of got, she was driving 5 kids around with one car. Didn't we only have one car? We didn't have 2, did we?
No, we had the station wagon.
Yeah, that's what
we
I
had
thought.
the Plymouth Fury station wagon, the green with the wood panel on the side.
Well, because we were about a block away from the church, so Dad could walk to work. Yeah. So we didn't really need 2 cars. But yes. So Mom was always really good at making friends, and she made some really good friends in Edmond. I mean, people she's still friends with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry to say still friends with today, but probably not because
like Jerry Payne and I'm still friends with Jerry Payne on Facebook.
Yeah, Carol Rudkin.
Mm-hmm.
She often said she wasn't special because she didn't feel like she had any really outstanding talents, but she was so grounded in God's word and in prayer, and people could see that, and they were just drawn to her. So you want to talk about this one?
Oh yeah, Mom. One of the things she did is that she was very good about staying healthy and exercising on a regular basis, and she walked, and that was important to her. And I remember going to the park and meeting her there, and we would walk for several miles. And during that time, we would talk and fellowship.
So good.
And it was such a good thing to be able to do that with her. And I think that a lot of times that she did that because she could walk and do all those things because she loved sweets. And would be able, she could have her sweets and then walk it off. And she, that way she loved chocolate. That was one of the things that she loved very much. I remember that she would like to, if we had leftover cake, that would be her breakfast sometimes, but then she'd go walk.
And she didn't do it all the time. But that's true. And I always remember the Bill Cosby thing. Cake for breakfast. It has eggs and flour and milk. Yeah, we can have cake for breakfast.
I think Mom would have written that for him.
She would have.
And, but like Mom, one of the places she loved to walk the most is on the beach.
Oh,
if she could find a beach any place, she would walk. And that's why she loved Panama so much. Because there was always a beach available.
Yes. And after 4 years in Oklahoma with no beach, God called Mom and Dad back to the mission field, and we went to the Panama Canal Zone. And I don't think any of us really knew much about it until we got there.
Oh, we didn't know anything about it.
But we grew to love it.
I still remember Mom and Dad came to Melissa and I, and they said, we need to talk to you guys. And of course, my first thought is I was in trouble. Seriously. I mean, if Mom and Dad tell you, Melissa's reaction was probably totally different than mine. And Melissa was probably like, oh, what are they going to give me? But mine was, I'm in trouble.
What did I do?
And so I'm coming up with excuses already as I'm walking to the room.
Even though he doesn't know what it is.
I don't know what it is, but there's got to be a reason. So they sit us down and they say, we have this opportunity that's been given to us. And I'm like, okay, I didn't do anything. Okay, I'm good. Okay. And so they tell us that the Canal Zone, which until that point had been led by the Home Mission Board, has been turned away from the Home Mission Board and given to the Foreign Mission Board.
Forgot about that. Okay.
And you have a lot of gaps.
I do. I know.
And so the Foreign Mission Board, which is now the International Mission Board, by the way.
IMB.
The Foreign Mission Board has talked it over, and they felt that Dad was really the best person for this new position that's opened up, which is really unusual because once you had, during that time, I don't know if it is the same way now, but once you left the Foreign Mission Board, you really didn't get called back.
Yeah.
And so the position was someone to come in and work with an associational missionary in the Canal Zone. There were a lot of different denominational churches there that were Christian churches, and they wanted a missionary to come in and to work with all of those churches to do Christian work together.
Some unification.
Yes. And to bring them together to do acts for Christ together within the community of the Canal Zone. and they felt that Dad was the best person to do that.
He was.
And he really was.
Yeah.
But they said, we know that you guys are more established here. I was going into the 9th grade. Melissa had just graduated. Had you? Yeah.
Yeah, because I had already gone to 1 year at the time.
Yeah.
Central State University.
And so they said, you know, if you guys, you're oldest, we don't want to shake up your world. I mean, come on, that's parents taking that kind of consideration of their children. Most parents would say, hey, we're moving, shut up, it's tough.
Here it is.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. They took us into consideration. And Melissa and I, not even practicing this or anything else, we didn't even look at each other. We said at the exact same time, when do we move?
Yeah.
We're
ready.
Yeah, we were ready to go. We were ready for our next adventure.
Yeah.
We love being out of the country. We love being in different places. And so that's when they told the rest of the family, but it was a big secret. We couldn't tell anybody. Yeah. Nobody could know.
Nobody outside of the family.
Yeah. So, and that was before internet. We couldn't like Google it on our phone or anything like that.
Yeah, that's right.
We would go to the library and secretly look up the Canal Zone and Panama and encyclopedias and see what the temperature was there, what the weather was like. And we found out that it got over 140 inches of rain a year. 140 inches of rain. I mean, that's like 12 feet of rain a year that it got. You know, it's crazy. And so we learned everything that we could about the Canal Zone, and we were really excited. And so we moved there in June of 1975.
Really?
And
I don't remember the years.
I remember getting off the airplane, and it was back when they used to roll up the steps to the airplane.
And you got down on the runway and walked into the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember stepping off that airplane and having the humidity hit you. It's just like a sheet of wet.
And you're like, I'm back.
Yes. And you're like, oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And so it was the best. We didn't know at that time, but it was going to be the best 4 years of our life.
So good. It was so good. So I lived there the first year that y'all were there, and I went to Canal Zone College. Mm-hmm. It's on my transcript. And after the first year, I went back to CSU and finished up, and I went home for holidays and summers. Mm-hmm. Now so what was your experience like? Because you were in high school there, weren't you?
Well, I started my 9th grade. I did my 9th grade year and went through my 12th grade year.
Okay.
And so I graduated from high school there. And I remember looking for a church, and there was a small church, and it was far away, but had a great fellowship. And this is where we really wanted to go. And then Mom and Dad saying, yeah, I'm sorry, we're going to have to overrule. We're going to go to First Baptist. And we were all really upset about it. But then it turned out to be the best decision. And we made, I still have friends, you know, that I'm in contact with. Actually, I just got back from this summer. I spent a week with Ken Sainer, who is probably my oldest standing friend that I know right now. And he's up in Maine. And so we formed lasting friendships there. And so it was absolutely the best time.
What I do remember is that First Baptist Balboa is where we ended up. And I forgot the name of the other little church too, but we were really
Coakley Baptist.
Yeah, we were set on that one, but the mission board asked us to go to First Baptist Balboa because they felt like we were more needed there, that we could do. And so Mom and Dad, they weren't going to force us, but they said, we really feel like this is where we need to be. And so we all prayed about it and decided, okay,
that's where you want us.
Not where we wanted to go, but you're right. It ended up being so good. Mom loved the Canal Zone, loved Panama. And we were always within, 15 to 20 minutes to get to a beach?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that long?
Fort Amador was right there.
Yeah.
You go out of the causeway, and she spent a lot of time.
That was one of her favorite things. It was this long strip of land, which is still there. I looked it up the other day.
Yeah, but now they have stores and stuff on it.
It was built, and I didn't know this until I looked it up. It was built with rocks taken out of the canal when the canal was built. It goes out about 3.5 miles into the ocean, and you can drive down it to the end. You can walk on it, and we would sit out there with our friends and talk and play guitar. And Mom was just like in heaven. That was
her favorite place, one of the favorite places in the world.
Yeah. And this is when she really began ministering to young people, high school and college. Again, we went to First Baptist Balboa, and Mom started teaching. I think it was a college class.
It was a college class because they didn't have anybody to teach college.
Yeah. And so Mom stepped up and took it over.
she really didn't want to,
I know.
because she didn't see herself as a teacher. She didn't
Right.
see herself as gifted in any way. So she decided, okay, well, I'm gonna do this.
And I think they had like 3 or 4 people in the class when it started, and it grew to like 30 or 40
Oh,
because
it got I don't know, 30 or 40, but it got big.
yeah,
And it got bigger on the summer because a lot of the college
Right.
kids would come home to see mom
Right.
and dad from the States. And so, it was really pretty amazing.
yeah. So the other place that mom would go and talk to kids, high school and college,
But
was
go
go ahead.
I want to say something about that college class. I have people that I'm still in contact with that I'll post on the anniversary of mom passing, mom's heaven anniversary.
Yeah.
And people will say, your mom had such an impact
Yes.
on me. That college class is probably the best class I've ever been to. Your mom was such a great teacher. Some people say, I still have the Bible where she put the gold stars in the Bible.
She did.
And, that's like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
40 years ago, and she had an impact. Some of these people have not only children, but grandchildren. And still, my mom is one of the most influential people in these people's lives.
It's just trickling down.
Yeah. And so to me, my mom has been a spiritual leader in these people's lives, and that people have seen her and who she was and set goals in their own lives, in their children's lives, and their grandchildren's lives. And that's what you're supposed to be doing. My mom was one of the most humble human beings you'll ever meet. She would tell you, I am not sufficient to do anything.
Yeah.
But in that insufficiency, she was able to impact the lives of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, because she was humble enough to realize that it wasn't her that was doing it, it was God.
Well, and because she did feel inadequate a lot, she leaned into God.
Oh, absolutely.
That was how she dealt with it. So she just made a huge impact with some kids. And some I remember Rhodey Marshall, you mentioned Ken and Jenny Sainer, Naja Van Hoos.
Kathy.
Yes, Kathy. Kathy and Steve, they were twins.
Yeah, their father was the ambassador to Panama.
Yeah, and I can't think of the last name.
I can't either.
Okay. But just a lot of them who just loved mom. And I think it was because she was so accepting. She didn't point fingers. She didn't judge. She didn't, get onto them for not doing stuff.
Sandy Bridges.
Yes. Well,
Sandy Bridges Pinella.
Yeah. She just had a huge impact on these kids because she loved them. And they knew that.
Well, and I still remember Kathy. Mom was at hold court at the bowling alley.
Yeah.
And the kids would be lined up to talk to my mom. They waited their turn because they came from unhappy homes. They came from homes that adults didn't respect them or love them. And one time she was sitting there talking to Kathy, and the police walked in, and Kathy handed my mom something. She says, put this in your bra. And without looking, my mom tucked it into her bra. And the police walked by, and then they ended up leaving, and mom took it out, and it was a joint. Kathy had given my mom a joint to put in her bra. So this missionary woman had a joint in her bra. And my mom she couldn't believe that Kathy had done that to her. But this is the kind of woman that she was. These kids trusted my mom, and I shared my mom with so many kids. And I never resented that, because there was always enough of mom to go around.
Yep. So after 4 years in Panama, they moved back to the States. They lived in Houston for a while. They got their master's degree in counseling from Houston Baptist University, and then eventually went back to Oklahoma. They were active members of Henderson Hills Baptist, and they opened a counseling center there. Do you remember that? It was right there on the grounds. And that is when mom started doing prison ministry at Mabel Bassett Prison for Women. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly how she got into that.
She just felt God called her into prison ministry, that she needed to do that. And so she just went. We were scared to death for her. That she
was scared to death for her.
But she just felt that there were some women that needed to know Jesus, and these women in prison needed to know who Jesus was. And so she decided that she was going to do that. And so she went. And, after years of her doing this, we realized that these women loved my mom. Not only the prisoners, but also
the guards.
The guards loved my mom.
All the staff there.
And we came to a point that we realized that if there was ever a prison riot, if anybody was going to be safe, it was mom.
Yeah. Nobody would hurt her.
Nobody would hurt her. The guards would protect her. The prisoners would protect her. Everyone would protect her. And then the other thing is mom was the only chaplain, volunteer chaplain, that was allowed to go onto death row that could give communion to the prisoners.
Yeah.
And one of her best friends who eventually got exonerated, Donna Bechtel.
Yeah.
She was on death row, and mom became good friends with Donna. And then Donna, who was on death row for killing her husband, who
in a very abusive situation, extremely.
She kind of got framed up for all of this. Yeah. That fell apart. She got let free, and then until she died, mom and Donna were very good friends. And so that's the kind of, this humble woman had such an impact on people wherever she went.
Yeah. Well, she was a volunteer chaplain at Mabel Bassett, worked there for like 20 plus years. I don't remember exactly how long. And I do remember when she first started going there, Dad was a little worried because it was a drive. And, a lot of times she's coming back when it's dark or something. So she ended up getting a car phone. You remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Big, it was the size of a couple of shoe boxes.
Yep.
But it did give her, because, we didn't have cell phones back then. If something happened, she could call. She also got the Chaplain of the Year award for the state of Oklahoma towards the end. I don't remember what year it was, but that was a big deal. She impacted hundreds, if not thousands, of lives there. So some themes with mom. One was exercising. She was always very active, and I think I get that from her. I remember she told me she was a majorette in high school or college. She marched behind the horses. She'd be throwing the baton, and they'd be dodging poop because it was behind the horses.
You're going to dodge something.
Yeah. She always loved walking on the beach and swimming. She swam laps at the Y. A long time, walking on the causeway. And then I remember, I think this was when I was in high school, or it may have been once they came back. I don't remember. But
after she came back, she started that.
Okay. She joined a group called the Tapping Grannies, and she learned how to tap dance.
She always was trying new things.
Yeah.
She was never afraid of new things.
She loved that. The other theme that we haven't talked about was Angel Tree. You want to talk about that?
No, I don't remember much about Angel Tree.
So Angel Tree is a ministry started by Chuck Colson, and it's designed to help children of prisoners, prison inmates, because they don't get Christmas presents from their parents. It's not like they can go out to Walmart and get them presents. So you get presents for the kids, and they're from the parents. And so mom started this ministry at Henderson Hills, and it was started this small little thing. And I don't know if you were there at the time, but after doing it several years, starting like after Thanksgiving, people knew, and they would just start buying stuff and giving it to them. Their whole first floor of their condo, you could barely walk because there were so many presents there. And it grew to this big party. And at the church, mom, one of her favorite things was delivering presents to the families. You went on her.
Yeah. And we're talking delivering presents in the ghetto, in the hood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it was scary for me, but as soon as mom knocked on that door, it would be Chaplain. And they just loved on her, and they would hug her, and all the kids would come running to the door.
Excited.
It was amazing.
Yeah. It was just a huge, huge, big thing for her. She loved that. Santa Clara in Panama. She loved going there with
Santa Clara was just
the accident.
We don't need to talk about that. That's me. But Santa Clara was just a beautiful place. It was a place that she would love. She would walk on the beach.
A church camp was there.
Our church camp was there. And she would always take time to just walk on the beach. And sometimes it was with some kids. Sometimes it was by herself. But she would always find someone, that needed to just walk and talk. Yeah. And that was her place where she would just listen.
And in Santa Clara, we would have baptism services in the ocean.
Yeah.
Which was when I saw the movie, The Jesus Revolution, they reminded me of Santa Clara.
Yeah.
The same type of thing.
Really cool.
So in March 2009, mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So at that point, she was born in 1930. She would have been 69. 69. Okay. They tried treatment, but it really just made things much, much worse for her. She just got loopy. I don't know if you ever visited her in the hospital when she was doing that, but she couldn't focus. It was not good. So she and dad made the very difficult decision to stop the treatment and just let things run their course. Okay. I thought she was 79 at the time. Well, anyway, she said if she had been like 10 years younger, she might have fought it, but.
Oh, no, it was 79.
It was 79. That's what I thought.
30, 70, 79. Okay. Sorry.
She probably would have made it a different choice. And one thing that I remember, and I didn't realize it at the time that it was extraordinary, but other people were like, wait, what? She had no pain ever. Ovarian cancer, y'all, is extremely, excruciatingly painful. And I think the reason she didn't is because by this time we did have Facebook and we were letting people know she had thousands of people praying for her all over the world. She never had any pain.
And I remember I was speaking at a conference in Tampa Bay, Florida, and I was about to head home, and I got a call from Dad saying, "Mom's probably not going to make it much longer."
Yeah.
And so I flew into Dallas. I lived in Dallas. I called Virginia and I said, "I'm just going to take the car and I'm going to go straight up to Oklahoma City." And I drove up to Oklahoma City that night, and I got to go in to see Mom a little bit, and she knew that I was there. You know, she wasn't doing well. She couldn't talk. And I slept in the living room that night. And I remember praying, you know, God, if it's time for her to go, you know, because it was wearing my dad out. He was exhausted. He was taking care of her.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was about 3:00 in the morning. I was awake and I was praying. And I don't even know if Melissa remembers this, but I talked to Melissa and Susie, and they said that they had been praying the same thing about the same time, that if it's time to go ahead and do it before Dad gets up the next time to check on her. And I remember laying there and hearing her breathing and then hearing the breathing stop. And about 6:00 in the morning, Dad got up to check on her, and he came back out and he touched me and he says, "She's gone." And but it was definitely a life well lived.
It was.
It was a life that she touched thousands of people's lives. And that impact is still taking place now.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
And one of the things I remember a couple of nights before she passed away, Marcia Newkirk, our pastor's wife at the time, Henderson Hills Baptist, loved Mom. Totally loved Mom.
Absolutely.
And Marcia had been a nurse, and she came in and was sitting with Mom. And again, Mom, she couldn't talk a whole lot, if at all. And I remember Marcia praying and singing over Mom. And that was very near the end. So, you know, we all knew it was coming. We all had time to say goodbye to her, which meant so much. And on September 26, 2009, that's when we lost her. Her funeral was packed. And I don't remember who it was, but one person came up to me and really summed it up, said, "I don't remember Barb ever saying anything bad about anyone." I mean, what a great memorial. So we're going to read a couple of things here. The first one is one that Mom wrote to us, sent out an email. She was the queen of email. And this was a few months before she was diagnosed.
Yeah, this is actually, we had all gotten together, for Christmas of this year. And this was kind of her before Christmas letter. And she did not know about the cancer.
Right.
I remember pictures of everybody and everything was great.
But she had to have it by then.
Yeah, but she had to have it.
Yeah.
So, but she wrote this. She said, Thanksgiving Day's past and Christmas is coming. And I'm kind of stuck on Thanksgiving. During my early morning prayer times, every Thursday is Thanksgiving. I don't ask for anything. I don't even intercede for loved ones. I just give thanks. I count my blessings.
Sounds like Mom.
Yep. I was thinking this morning about how many years ago a young girl began searching for something to fill an empty place in her heart. On the day after Christmas, and that's kind of interesting, in 1948, she found what she was looking for and responded to an invitation to accept Jesus as her Savior. The day after New Year's in 1949, she was baptized at First Baptist Church in Chula Vista, California. That was 60 years ago. A loving Heavenly Father knew that she didn't know anything about living a Christian life and brought a group called the Navigators into her life. They showed her how to do it, and watching their lives changed hers. They taught her many things, but the most important they taught her many things, but the most important was the importance of Bible study.
Yeah.
They challenged her to begin a systematic memorization of Scripture. One of the verses that
she did her whole life.
Oh yeah, that profoundly impacted her life was 2 Timothy 3:16. All Scripture is inspired by God and is useful to teach us what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. It corrects us when we are wrong, and it teaches us to do what is right. She found that the Bible had many commands and promises and was intended to become a roadmap for life. Well, that was then, and this is now. As the new year approaches, I challenge my family and my friends to set aside regular time to read God's Word, that you will purpose to memorize these verses of assurance. And if you do, you will be blessed, I promise. So here are the verses. Assurance of salvation, 1 John 5:11 through 13. Assurance of forgiveness, 1 John 1:9. Assurance of answered prayer, John 16:24. Assurance of victory over temptation, 1 Corinthians 10:13. And then the last one's assurance of guidance, Proverbs 3:5 and 6.
And those are the assurance verses in the Navigator's TMS, Topical Memory System. I've got them all memorized too.
Yeah. And then it says, you are loved and appreciated. May God continue to bless you and make you a blessing. I pray that you will be joyous, Christ-centered. I pray that you will have a joyous, Christ-centered Christmas, Mom. And, just that was hard. But Mom had, I was telling Melissa this earlier, Mom had a centered Christian life, a great foundation because of the Navigators. She did regular prayer, regular Bible study, and regular memory of Scripture. But she knew that there was more to life, more to her spiritual life than just those things. As a preacher's wife, a Southern Baptist woman, a missionary wife, and someone who's very humble, she continued looking for ways to grow. And one of the things I'll share with Melissa is that here's this woman. She went to a Dennis Jernigan night of praise with me.
She loved it.
Well, she'd never been. She grew to. She'd never been to anything like it before. And here I took her, and she was in her late 60s when she went, and so which is not much older than I am now, which is kind of scary.
You got to watch it.
But here she went to this place that was packed to the gills, and there was all these young people, college students, and they were singing and praising God and raising their hands and standing in the aisles and crying and worshiping God. And I thought, Mom thinks I took her to an insane asylum, but she didn't, because she saw it for what true worship was. And Mom learned that worship wasn't just the way that she grew up.
Yeah.
Worship grows, and worship changes, and worship
and there's lots of different ways to do it. Yeah.
And so mom's spiritual life grew in that way too. And so she ended up going with me to so many Dennis Jernigans. And this little bitty Southern Baptist woman learned to raise her hands and praise and learned to cry before God. And, she was still founded in the fundamentals of Christianity, but she continued to grow in her spiritual life. And that's what we need to be doing, is to follow that example that she set.
So I'm going to read something that I wrote and read at her funeral. Did we all speak at her funeral? I know you and I did. Mm-hmm. I think we did. In the past few weeks and months, several well-known people have died. Michael Jackson, Farrah Fawcett, Patrick Swayze. All of these celebrities were heroes to thousands of people. But the person we're here to honor today was mine. I looked up hero in the dictionary and found several definitions. Someone who is admired for outstanding qualities or achievements. A person with superhuman powers. A long sandwich. I went with the first one. I've admired and looked up to Mom for many years, and I want to share a few of my reasons for doing so. Mom had the gift of enjoying the moment and making the most of her situation. She taught me through her example and her words not to complain, because it was usually a waste of time and effort. She also had a knack for having fun and enjoying life. I remember sometimes growing up, I would find her having a piece of chocolate pie for breakfast. This was not a case of eating dessert first, but eating dessert only. I remember her saying on a regular basis that if you were thinking something nice about someone, you should let them know, because it could change their whole day. And she practiced what she preached. She wrote letters and cards and sent emails regularly until her eyesight grew too bad for her to continue. When we were growing up, she would write us notes and tape them to the doorways of our rooms. This was before Post-it notes. We would leave them there for months and usually had quite a collection at any given time. Our friends would come and read them. Who wrote these? They always asked. We'd say, our mom. Even then, we realized to an extent that we were blessed. Most moms didn't take the time to do this. I also admire the fact that in spite of being a pastor and a missionary's wife, as well as the mother of 5 children, she took time for herself. She realized the importance of nurturing herself and doing things that she enjoyed. She was independent and strong-minded while remaining very spiritual and humble. Mom had many qualities I admired and appreciated. I love her deeply and will miss her greatly. I want to be just like her when I grow up.
And then this is a lady, a letter that was written by a lady named Lord Merrill after the celebration service that we had after Mom's passing. And she said, I want to express my sympathies to you and your family and to share thoughts about Barbara. Her life celebration service was very special and glorified the Lord and honored her and her testimony. Thank you for planning such a special event together. What a precious woman she was to me and so many others. Barbara touched my life early upon my arrival at Henderson Hills 16 years ago. We met through a women's Bible study, and I fell in love with her heart for God right away. She was the funniest older lady I have ever met. I think she got some of that from Dad.
Yeah,
she introduced herself to our Bible study class the first day, and she shared how she had spent time in prison. After she enjoyed our shocked faces, she let us know that she ministers regularly in prison, sharing God's love and hope to the women at Babel Bassett. I enjoyed sitting under her teaching and encouragement for couple studies. One was about parenting, which she helped me as a parent for years. She was always such an encourager to me. She encouraged me to join her in prison one Sunday afternoon for a celebration ceremony. It was that time that I gave my testimony to a group for the first time. I will never forget how nervous I was upon arriving in prison. Barbara looked at me and said, I should have told you not to wear jeans. The prisoners wear jeans here, and once you get there, they may not let you out. She was completely serious, and as she contemplated what to do with me, her statement gave me a moment of panic. Had she known how nervous I was, she probably wouldn't have had done it. Wait, no, she might still have said it.
Yeah,
I think she enjoyed it, shocking people. Here, you can read the rest.
Okay. Within a year after my afternoon in prison with her, the Lord prompted me to share my testimony with the women from our church at our women's retreat. Barbara was my support all the way through the process. She encouraged me, prayed for me, and loved me as I stepped out in obedience to what God was calling me to do. She encouraged me afterwards and affirmed me through her acceptance and love. I would have to say that those 2 steps of obedience, the prison and the retreat, was what God used in my life to begin to prepare me for what he has me do today, teach and speak to women in Bible studies, retreats, seminars, and events. And Lori is now a very well-known and accomplished speaker. Wow. And Mom had a hand in that. What a joy to think about Barbara being such an integral part of that. I believe God sent Barbara Green into my life to help me discover the ministry he had for me. Some of the things I loved about Barbara were her love for God, her love for others, her compassion and care for others. Should have put my glasses on. Her love for women in prison, because it's got something there.
Her smile, her sense of humor, the way she loved to surprise and shock people. She was so young at heart.
Oh, yeah, she was. Okay, this I can get. That she took tap dancing at her age. She was an encourager. Oh my gosh, so much. She loved her family. She trusted God. She had a zest for life. Most importantly, she made me want to love him even more. I am so very thankful for all the gifts of Barbara's friendship in my life. God used her in so many ways all those years ago. I have thanked him often for the gift of her to me. I know you have as well. It doesn't seem enough to say how much she inspired me, but I hope it gives you joy and inspiration as well. In his love, Lori Merrill. Anything to wrap up?
Yeah, I just, we live in a male-dominated society, and I think that women, Melissa has this series about women, and women have such a tremendous role and such an impact that they can have in our homes and in the lives of their children and the lives of people around them. I want to encourage you to be a Barbara Green.
Yeah.
Find ways
Yeah.
that you can love people, that you can encourage people. You don't have to have a degree.
No.
You don't have to have, a master's degree or a doctorate. You don't have to do anything like that. It doesn't take one of those degrees to love people. It doesn't take one of those degrees to encourage people. If you have kids, don't forget to tell them you love them. Don't forget to look for things that they're doing right. It's really easy to
And
find
encourage
things that
them.
they're doing
Yes,
wrong
yes.
and yell at them for those things. Find the things that they're doing right and tell them those things. Kids need to hear positive things from you as a mom. And my mom once told me, and this is true, is that for every negative thing that you say to your child, it takes 7 positive things to negate that one negative thing that you say. So why don't we just work on positive?
Yeah.
Moms have the biggest impact on the kids in our homes today than anybody else. And you being a mom, you can do that. And also take that and transfer it outside of your home. Transfer the people that you meet.
Yeah.
Be that positive force. And then the last thing is look at the navigators.
Yes.
And see what they're
ministry.
doing
Yeah.
and follow a plan. And you may think, oh, I can't do that. But yeah, you can. You can take time to read your Bible every day.
Yep.
You can take time to memorize maybe one verse a week.
Yeah.
Those things will
Perfect.
help get you grounded in what God is doing and wants to do through you. And you may not see it now, but if you do this consistently, a year from now, you're going to look back and say, here's how much you've grown and the person that you're becoming is that you have control of where you're going. And if you make a choice today, if you make a stand and say, God, I want to be who you want me to be, and you start following a plan
instead of making excuses.
Then God can make you who you need to be.
Yeah.
And you can look in the Bible, and there are women who had impact in the Bible, and they wouldn't have been included in the Bible unless they were great women of faith. And you can be a woman of faith as well. Yeah. And I want to encourage you to do that.
I think the best thing about Mom is that although she never felt special or talented or gifted, she never let that stop her from doing what God was leading her to do. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. I love her. I still miss her. And I know this is not my usual podcast, but she's been gone 14 years, and I still look forward to seeing her again.
And this was probably a little bit long, but when we start talking about Mom, it's worth every minute.
So many good things to say. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week. Everyone have a good one. Bye.